Today we are talking with Wendi Hinrichs. She is a mom, a wife, and a small business owner. Hello, Wendi.
Well, great. Well, nice to meet you, Karuna. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to chat with you. I've heard a lot about you from Denise, and I've watched a couple of the videos. The one with Carrie I watched this morning, and then the one with Christopher. Forget his last name, Christopher.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's great work that you guys are doing. So thank you.
Thank you for helping us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So what were you thinking about? What was on your mind?
Well, I have two teenagers who are amazing, great kids. They're very self-aware, and we have a close-knit family. And my biggest concern that I don't know how to balance is how to be real with them about our concerns, but not so much so that we are instilling panic or, you know, undue anxiety. But my children are very real people, and they can read through fakeness really well. And so if I came home and said, oh, you know, you guys, everything's gonna be fine. Everything's good. We're fine. Don't worry. They would read through that. So it's a balance of how, and we run a small business, and financially we are getting hit. And I know we're going to be okay in the end, but it doesn't mean that we are worried. You know, we are, and we didn't get the funding because they ran out.
Oh, you didn't? Yeah.
We did not. We applied. There's going to be a second round, so we could get it, but we're going to have to lay off another employee today that we thought we could keep. So they're real life concerns, and we want to be able to be real, but not so much that they feel like it's their responsibility or they need to be overly worried, you know, because we want to, of course, give them the confidence that we got this and we're going to be okay. But, you know, there's a part of us that's like, we're just doing the best we can do. So I would love some advice on how to be real, but not to be
alarmist,
and not to, you know, I might have more worries, but I don't want them to worry about it.
Right.
They've got their own, you know, they've got their own concerns. School's different. They're missing a lot. My son's a junior in high school, and that's a big year for colleges. It's this year for colleges. So his SATs, ACTs, grades, all of that matter right now. My daughter's in 8th grade, and she's missing her 8th grade graduation. She's not having an 8th grade graduation. So they have their own, you know, not seeing their friends. So.
Good question. I mean, we're all, in one way, we're all sort of flying by the seat of our pants, right? Another way, way I think of it is how we set ourselves up for that. You know, how we set ourselves up in daily life is going to impact how we deal with this now, right? So people who are feeling imprisoned and suffering. So I mean, I gotta be sensitive, because, you know, people are really suffering. I'm not talking about the financial part. That I think we should put to the side for a second. But just the part about being stuck inside and not being able to go out and play golf, and not being able to go to restaurants and that sort of, that level of difficulty is definitely, don't you think, is dependent upon how much value you put into those things before this coronavirus hit. So people whose lifestyle was based upon distraction, really, entertainment, whatever you want to call it, then to that degree, they're the ones that are struggling with this. So, you know, it's just a sort of reflection on you know, what we're going through now emotionally is very, very dependent on how we're living our lives and what our values were, what values we lived by prior to all of this. So, you know, so some people are not having, you know, personally, it's not like bragging, but this has not been hard. This has been enjoyable. I mean, you know, but that's not addressing part of your question, which is, the real problem of the finances, for example, having to lay a worker off, your business going down. I mean, 1 in 7 people are unemployed. That might be in California. I'm not sure that's California or the country. That's, that's super scary, can be super scary for people. But about it being real, it sounds like anyway, it sounds like your family is real, authentic. You have good open communication with your kids to begin with. And that, so I was curious what you meant by this other description of real or honest or authentic with them that is not your normal way of being with them. Where's the difficulty come up?
Well, I think it comes up, I mean, I'll just be really transparent. Yesterday we found out on Thursday we weren't going to get the funding, and right. It hit me like a truck hit me.
Yeah.
And so I tried to hold it together, told the kids like, hey, we didn't get the funding, it's going to be okay. But I realized through how much it was really bothering me, because other communications weren't as smooth as they usually are. My daughter said kind of one thing that was snippy to me, and I just burst into tears, which I usually don't do. So that's what I mean by, and I didn't feel super comfortable like falling apart in front of them.
Right.
Because I don't want it to be their weight.
Right.
I want them to know we're going through it, but I don't want it to be their weight. And
right.
So that's what I struggle with. But at the same time, it's also, then I'm like a boomerang, because then I say, well, it's real life. And they need to be, this is what life is, and we're learning to be resilient, and all the things you hear. But as a mom, I don't want them to worry. I don't want them to worry.
Yeah. I think my strategy most of the time with parents and parenting, and this kind of question really is, they know what's going on for you, whether you say it or not say it. I mean, of course, if you keep it hidden that you didn't receive the funding, that's one thing. But essentially, I think it comes down to us on the question is, how do I handle all this? And then how you handle it or I handle it that will reflect in our parenting. So I think for the most part, what you're doing. And for the most part, I'm guessing, you're a good role model and a good mother and a good parent. I think what you're asking, what's coming up for all of us, is these are new stressors, okay? They're not the familiar ones. It's like war or depression. These are new. This is not the everyday ones. So I think the question for me is that how do you go through this? How do you go through this better? How do we go through this in a way that, you maintain your own balance and your own authenticity, your own quality? Then the fact that you didn't get the loan is not such a big deal with your kids, because you'll handle it. Either you'll tell them or you won't tell them. The deal, I think, for you and me is that as parents, I feel really frustrated or angry or scared. That's the part we don't know how to share with our kids or not share. Yeah. So it comes back at this point is handling our own emotions around it, I think, to begin with, or that's a big part of it. And that comes back to what we talked about earlier in terms of what are our values that we really live by. And some people's values, as I was saying before, their value is, they'll say, well, live life, enjoy life. But what they mean is extract as much pleasure and enjoyment out of it as they can. And unfortunately, that might mean get a better and better job, make more money, move to, an area that's nice. And I want to give my kids an education, all that kind of thing. And I want to be able to buy them what they want. Those are the people that are not going to do well right now, because their value, what they place their value in is being stripped from them. Obviously, they can't go play golf. And some do. Some are going to play. They don't know what to do with themselves because their value of my free time, I'm retired, I should be able to. So the value is, and the belief is, I'm entitled, right? I'm entitled. So, and I'm not making excuses for feeling poorly or scared. We do feel poorly or scared. When we juxtapose it again, and this is not meant to be a blaming thing, but you look around the world, we're even laying off your employee, is painful.
Mhm.
It's sort of what life is about.
Mhm.
Life. Okay, so here's my here's my maybe going a little religious on you. It's not really religious. Is that I think we're set up to believe that this life is not difficult, when in fact it is really difficult. But we've been
Okay.
kind of pampered, and fortunately, we haven't had it that tough. For many of us, you
Mhm.
know, even as a nation. I'm not talking about people who are homeless or hungry and, you know, I'm talking in a general sense. So you know, it's just a matter of perspective. So in many parts of the world, they don't have this perspective, this the expectation that that we're entitled to this lifestyle.
Mhm.
I don't think we're entitled to this lifestyle. I think it's a gift. Okay. And my daughter's living in Nepal now. They get arrested and fined if they go outside. But see, they're not suffering, because those are all luxuries I'm not saying going outside, of course, but you know, they've only had running water and electricity and televisions and internet for a short time. So it's
Mhm.
not, there's not the sense of entitlement. Okay. I think this entitlement expectation is what is a big problem for us. I don't know if that's helpful, because that's sort of the
It is.
conditioning. Okay, so
Mhm.
conditioning. So your kids are okay. I just think that we have to work more and more, and just, unfortunately. So this is the downside: is life is not that great. There's many great things in it, but there's uncertainty. There's actually no freedom from illness yet, as we see right now. Um, you know, even violence, there's no real freedom from violence. People are surprised when their houses get broken into, but actually, we're not free from those things yet. We're surrounded by difficulty. It's just a question when it hits us or doesn't hit us. And those of us who are lucky, it doesn't hit us that often. Right now, this is something that's just a natural occurring. It's like an earthquake. Where we're stuck, or where we get stuck, is we have a philosophy that tells us that we can manipulate the external world in order to be happy. And the reality is, the truth is, maybe it's a small t, like gravity, is that gravity is a truth. It just is what it is. And I think the other truth, there's a number of truths that we don't get educated or not part of our culture. And one of them is that difficulty is sort of unending, externally, not internally, externally. So when the more we rely on externally to have our internal well-being, we're setting ourselves up to huge vulnerability. And that's and it's interesting to look at all the different people around us experiencing this situation. From some people are enjoying it as a holiday, to those who are really suffering. And again, I'm not mentioning the finance thing right at the moment. You know, that's you have to have your safety. You do have to have your safety and your your housing and your food. Okay, that's basic. But after that, we're not actually honest with what the nature of life is, and that is one difficulty after the other. Unfortunately, it just is. So we're in a difficulty now of a larger proportion. But you know, before this virus, there were people down the street that were experiencing more difficulty because they had someone who was sick, or they had someone they just lost, or they lost a job. It doesn't end. It really doesn't end. Now we're in it together collectively, but still it comes down to me and you, right? It comes down to how am I doing? So yeah, so it's just a question now of getting control of the emotional reaction. In my opinion, that's what I'm trying to do. And that's all the
Mhm.
same. You know, if I can go on and on, I mean, sorry if I'm going on too long. Sorry. I got to stop. I'll stop.
Please go on, because I think that it's important that, you know, if life is if life is suffering, as a Buddhist thought agrees
Yep.
to, then when someone hasn't been exposed to the idea that life is suffering, and if we do something about that, or like what do we enact?
Okay.
We don't understand life in that way. How do we begin to understand it in a way that's beneficial to us?
So the first thing for people who, I mean, the word suffering is kind of it's a bit philosophical term. Basically, I like to say life is problematic. You know, it's just it's full of problems, whether they're hitting us right now or not. The reason I think that we say that life is problematic or life is suffering is we have no control. So I don't know today from tomorrow if there's going to be an epidemic, a pandemic, cancer, right? And the reason I started laughing is because another truth, small t, is that death and sickness, or let's say death is not an unusual thing. It's only one breath away, one heartbeat. That's the only thing keeping us alive. So actually, the chances of dying are much higher than living. And it's a miracle we're alive, actually. But we think it's a miracle when someone dies, a bad miracle when someone dies. But it's so upside down. It's not, our belief system's upside down, our value system's upside down. So if we were living with the idea that sickness is all around us, and it's just a question, some say luck, some say karma, death is all around us, some say luck, some say karma, some say fate, whether we're dead or sick. But it's not the fact that the coronavirus is kind of new. It's just a new label. But sickness is there all the time. Disease, look at it this way. Cancer is inside of every one of us right now. We're walking around with cancer. But we aren't terrified each moment about that. We go on with our lives. And but when you know it, it's like, wow, this life becomes a miracle. And this life becomes so precious, right? It's like, so it's only one breath right here. Mm-hmm. So that's this moment. So then you can bring that into your relationship with your kids. Mm-hmm. It's this moment. Okay, I heard about the bank loan, but here we are. You know, that's just the bank loan stuff is all just, I mean, it's real, but it's also, a lot of it is the drama around the message, no bank loan. Everything on the news, everything we know about the coronavirus is like the notice you get about the bank loan. The notice about the bank loan, whether we get denied it or get it, it's just a jumble of words, right? Letters. If I go real philosophical, it's nothing but a organization of atoms, right? Let's say you got it in an email. Yes, it's pixels, and you can't, you start finding. So where the practice, deeper practice comes from is understanding that there are those pixels, you know, they arrange a certain way. That's not where the problem comes from. Even the statement, no bank loan, is not really where the problem comes from. Everything after that is projection onto that. And then we make a fantasy and a drama and a whole story. And people say, it's not a drama, it's real. I have to lay off an employee. I get it, but it also is just factual, isn't it? Mm-hmm. The suffering part of it is personal. It's internal, you know? So, and I'm not trying to sugarcoat the difficulty, but I think what we're doing is we're putting difficulty on top of difficulty. That's 90% of our problem is that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, 90% of our problem is that. Okay. So it's kind of like, I had one of my teachers long ago, I was in New Delhi with him, and he had kind of turned me on to chili, hot chili, which I really like now because the food is so bad that I discovered, you know, when you put a lot of chili on it, it somehow takes the bad away. So one of his teachers came to have lunch with him, and I wasn't there I was out shopping that day, and I came back and I said, well, so I passed the chili to my teacher to have with dinner, and he says, no, I don't eat that anymore. And he had just introduced me to chili like a week before, and I was like, oh, addicted. And I said, what do you mean, Rimsha, you don't eat that? He says, oh, well, when his teacher came that day, he offered him some chili, and his teacher said, why would I use that? The food's bad enough as it is. It's in the nature of suffering. Why do I put suffering on top of suffering? I mean, you know, why would I burn my mouth on this food that's no good anyway? So it's kind of like that. The bank notice is kind of the bad food, right? Yeah.
Right.
And the people dying out there and getting infected. That's all the bad news. That's the bad food. But look at the projection and narrative around it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if we were to extract the narrative, our narrative, the news's narrative around it, extract it, if you could take it out, I think people would be doing much better emotionally.
Okay.
Karuna, if I can ask, I think this is a perfect moment for a real quick drop on impermanence.
That's what death is. Death is connected with impermanence. When I get, I don't know about you, Wendi, but does this happen for you? I think I stay pretty relaxed through all this is because I don't see it as eternal.
Mm-hmm.
I think when people get really freaked out is because time shrinks into just this permanence.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like solid, unchanging. This is never going to change. And I just sometimes, I don't know why it happens to me, but I see like things will look really different in 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
So then I ask my friends, well, you can't wait 6 months. I mean, what's 6 months? Big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's arrogant, right? But to me, 6 months is a big deal. 6 months, what's today? Now is what? April 19th or something?
Yeah.
So 6 months ago is what? November 19th?
Right.
Right before Thanksgiving. We all had, remember? Now we're
I
here.
don't know about you, Wendi, but my child was born yesterday.
Kind of like that. But you know, 6 months ago, it was 6 months ago. Now we're here. We're going to keep going. We're going to keep going there. Now, again, the people extremely suffering, you know, who are, you know, don't have money for tomorrow and those kinds of things. Yes, we have to have a lot of warmth and empathy, compassion, definitely. Something else that came up, one last thing about, it's not about impermanence as much as I think the number one remedy for us, one of the best remedies for us is compassion. So I know what you're going through, getting the notice from the bank is difficult, but when that happens, if you can remember to just either pick up the newspaper or look online or remember your friends' conversations, and they lost, 16 employees, they don't have savings, whatever. And to extend for just a minute or two, not to deny yourself, but just a minute or two of just really feeling their situation and the wish that they weren't in it.
Okay.
It's very, very, what do you call it? Something's healing. It's very healing, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Karuna. That really helped.
Did I?
Appreciate
Okay, good. Thank you for helping me. Thank you for helping me because I get help because when you ask these questions, I don't have it's not like a formula, right? It's not like canned answers. I mean, there are some fundamental principles, of course, but you allow me to think about. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
It's not always easy to express those things. So thanks.
No. Well, I appreciate you giving me the chance, and thank you for being so open and you have a very warm presence. I don't think your kids have a lot to worry about.
Aw, thank you, Karuna.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
And thanks, Nisi Bisi.
Thanks for being on with us, Wendi.
You're welcome.